All right. Thanks for joining me today. Appreciate you taking the time. Really psyched for what we're going to be talking about. Think it's going to be pretty interesting. Hopefully, some of my animations work. But before I get to that, thanks for joining me at All Things Division Three Soccer with Simple Coach. I'm Simple Coach and Jackie, who is right there sleeping again. Um, Appreciate you taking the time. Before we get into today's video, I just wanted to give you a heads up on a couple of other things that are coming down the pike. Obviously, the three greater than one Premier League will continues, and I'm looking to do a video against a team here, hopefully in the next couple days. Thinking Thursday. And then I'm really psyched that I finally can announce that I'll be doing an interview of Coach Ruben Burke of Connecticut College, the 2021 national champions. Really excited to talk about him as a coach, talk about some really interesting games that we all watched in the fall, and then really want to dive into aspects of recruiting. So I figure there's going to be folks here who might be interested, high school folks who might be interested in attending and playing collegiate soccer. So hopefully get to peel back some of his thoughts on the whole recruiting process, especially with all of the COVID things. Maybe we're returning to normal, maybe we're not. So I'm really going to uncover that there. So really excited for that. I'm thinking it's probably not going to, I'm not going to release it until a week from now, but just get that on your radar. Also have a couple of other interviews that are lined up that I'm not going to announce yet. Once they get closer to reality, I certainly will. But really want to sort of explore different topics with different coaches as we go along. So if you are interested and you think you have something interesting to talk about, by all means, let me know, and we'll shoot me an email, and happy to take a look, and let's do it. Let's get something on the calendar. So and then with that, I'm just going to ask you to, if my chief marketing officer, who is currently in school, he would be annoyed if I didn't raise it with you, the subscribe, like, and bell thing. And then, if you could share this with any of your friends or like-minded folks who enjoy Division Three soccer, would appreciate if you do so. This is maybe one of these days I'll explore how this all got started, and I'll talk about um, what seems to be a growing trend among kids and their, fascination with YouTube personalities, and how an old guy with not much talent on the video or decided to start a channel to teach his kids a lesson about what it takes to make something like this happen. So maybe I'll do a separate video, but we'll see. Okay, so with that, let's move on to today's video. Where do goals come from? So I took a look at in men's soccer for 2021. There's another video which I think I will try to link to somewhere up here. I might try to do that, get really crazy, where I'll put a link for. I did a similar look at 100 goals in 2021 for the women's game, and got a lot of positive feedback on it. Really, really do appreciate that, by the way. And so I decided. Well, I originally started to do so on the men, but turns out I ended up finishing the women's one a little bit quicker. So for this video, we're going to look at where they come from. I'm going to look at, and I'll explain what goals and passes and all of that. Let's move this forward. So, just to give you a rundown, this all started because I did an analysis for a friend slash coach that I know around goals. A look at goals his team scored, goals that got scored against his team. Um, from from my recollection, his team scored 31 goals in the season and allowed, and his team conceded 30 goals. His record, team's record for the year was 10, 7, and 1. And the whole point of this, and a point that he was trying to figure out in his own mind, was what was there a way to reduce the number of goals that were scored against his team? And if you could reduce those number of goals, what would it look like? And so what we discovered is that there were probably instances where there in the total 30 goals that were scored against him, there were 6 goals that with some modification that he could have prevented, or that his team could have prevented. So instead of conceding 30 goals, he would have conceded 24 against. And if he would have just, if his team would have just figured out to not concede those 6 goals, he would have gone from a 10, 7, and 1 record to a 12, 4, and 2 record and being in the conference championship. So it was really a defensive focus, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is a great idea. Why don't I take a look at goals and just see where they come from? Just try and understand. Remember, some of this channel was started because I have long held beliefs about the game, and I'm putting a lot of it to the test. Like, is it valid that I believe passing matters? And I did the first video was on passing because I thought there's a lot of kick and run. I guess it maybe doesn't matter, maybe it does. So I'll let you judge for yourself and go watch that video. But so this was another area like of about goals. Where do goals come from? How do they get started? All these different questions that I have about the game and opinions about the game, and I just wanted to validate or rethink my thoughts. So, for this particular exercise, originally wanted to do about 200 goals. I thought, if I could get to 200 goals, take a look at 200 goals, do all this analysis, I think that would be a good number. Unfortunately, it's a little bit more complicated than that. Obviously, having access to video was a key component, so I ended up having to do a lot of hunting for goals, and I just, quite frankly, I don't have the time to do that. But so I got to 100 and I thought, okay, that's good. I would have liked to do more games. And you'll see the stats when I roll through them. I would have liked to do more games, but again, the video, that makes it a little bit tough. And I wanted to do multi. I was looking for videos, and to make it easier, I picked games that had multiple goals to them. When you're trying to get to 200 originally, doing a bunch of 1-0 games just is too much. So, and not knowing where these goals were scored, having to hunt. Anyhow, you get the picture. So before I go on, let me just bring this up. So I did 100 goals. Of those 100 goals, 48 schools were represented in the 24 games that I watched. Right? So that's just math. 24 games equals 48 schools for 100 goals. It averages about a little bit over 4 goals a game, and it's about 2.1 goals per team, right? So The like I mentioned, I was looking for games where there were multiple goals scored, which is why the goals per game is probably a little bit higher than the reality. I think that probably the average per game is like half that. But to me, a 3-2 game was a lot more valuable than a 1-0 game. Obviously, right? I got 5 goals in one. So, um, and then the what may have skewed this a little bit too was that I was looking for competitive games. I didn't just, you know, I, I was more interested in a 3-2 game than I was in an 8-0 game, largely because I thought, a 3-2 game, the goals are probably more, this is terrible to think, but honest. Whereas an 8-0 game, after about 4, you don't know if that's a legitimate goal that the team scored, or was that, because the other team wasn't so good, or that they had just given up so they don't care. And so you don't get a real representation of how goals are scored. So that was sort of my own filter of how to make sure that whatever I came up with, it was legit. So um, and then lastly, how did I get to the goals? How did I how did I count the goals? So I wasn't so much interested in the goal per se. Like where I was interested is where did the ball come from. So for the analysis for my for the coach that I did, this originally started, I counted 5 passes back. So if I could, right? So defender gets the ball, knocks it to somebody, and I trace that activity and ultimately came up with, 5 passes. This is how you got to this spot where the goal was scored. Pretty straightforward. For this exercise, I just went, where did the pass come from that led to the goal? So think about midfielder plays a ball into the box to a forward. He takes a touch and shoots and scores. I counted and I sort of marked where the pass was made. The pass was made to the forward, and the forward scored. So those 2 points are what I captured, right? So really an assist, I guess you could say. There are some instances where goals are scored and you'll see once I pull up the graphic, I'll sort of explain to so that you see it straight in your head and it's understandable. So, um, okay, what other things do I have to say? Nope. Yep. Okay. So that's it. So that's my explanation of that, and hopefully it was clear as mud. And if not, feel free to take to anti-social media and let me know that it wasn't clear. But anyhow, so let's move on. So as I mentioned, the 48 schools. These are the 48 schools. I tried to get a broad representation of schools and their overall quality in schools. So, there's some elite schools, obviously, Connecticut College and Amherst, the 2 finalists this year in the national championship are represented, but so is Multnomah University, which I didn't know was a thing, um, is there. But these are all schools that came up in my search for video, and are captured. So they're whatever goals are scored are there. Keep in mind that I didn't care who scored the goals. I didn't care if they won or they lost. All I cared were goals. So I don't know. I have a spreadsheet that I track this that you can email me. I can send to you that I don't count who scored. All I care about is that a goal was scored. So I know the game. I know where the ball came from. I know what happened, and then I know the end result of the goal. So those were the data points that I captured. Nothing more than that. But these are the schools. Okay, all right. So this is the this is every pass slotted. Every pass diagrammed here represents those goals. Um, to just so you understand the colors, the black ones are regular passes. The orange, the orange, the orange balls that you could see here, including the ones over here, represent either corners or dead balls. So these orange balls around here are all dead balls. And then obviously the ones in the corner. The ones highlighted in yellow, so these ones are central, are the direct goals from corners, right? So sends in a corner, somebody heads the ball in. And then the red ones that you'll see are passes that lead to a penalty. So, so like as an example here, you'll see when I hit play, this ball will come into the box and stop. And where that stop is where the penalty, where the foul occurred, and I wasn't going to put a red soccer ball on the penalty spot because that doesn't do anything. So, so yeah, and then the blue arrows here you could see are the trajectory of the corner for all intents and purposes. So, so let me run this through, and then I'll sort of start breaking down from here. I think you should. I think this should. Oh, sorry. Here we go. So the if you notice, that squiggly line means that somebody just dribbled. So these are all the passes and where the ball went to. That was, and where it was scored from. Okay. Now let me say there were some banger goals watching these. I mean, there were some really impressive goals, some other not so impressive ones, and but if you were to take a look at all of those goals, this is what it looked like. There were, of the 100 goals, 13 were corner kicks. 7 were keeper errors, and quite frankly, I probably could have tripled that number. As a former goalkeeper coach, some stuff I just found appalling to as goalkeeper. I just never would have expected. But I didn't count judgment errors as goalkeeper errors. I just counted the obvious ones. Keeper comes out for the ball, goes through his hands, somebody taps it in. That I counted as an error. It had to be very, very clearly an error. It couldn't be one of opinion, because, like I said, that would have skewed that. There were 8 penalty kicks, and there were 6 dead ball goals. And I will say that even though, one in, 13 corner kicks led to goals and 6 dead balls led to goals, I'm almost tempted to do another analysis where I just show that how ineffective both of those end up being. But before I get controversial, we'll come to that. We'll talk about that later. So I then decided to take a look at, okay, where did these passes occur? And, what was the percentages of passes? So if you were to look at the pass started from this zone, so 30, 35, let's say 30 yards out between the 30s, 25% of the 100 passes that led to a goal came from this area, from this central spot. And no surprise, right? Like if you look at where goals are scored, right, the majority of them are are going to be in that final third, right? The final third is on the one hand is the best place to be. Also the most difficult to penetrate, but your rewards are a lot higher once you get in there. And then just so happened that one of the goals scored, the keeper launched forward and a forward got and buried it. So that's the 1% on that side. So that's if you divided the field into three zones. Now, if you look at it this way, from goal to goal, tells a little bit different. So in that central area, so just outside the 6 yard box on both sides, you're looking at 54% of goals came from this zone. So over half came from this central area. And then if you look on the wings, equally, they're 23%. I actually did this earlier than I did the women, and with the women, I basically plotted on the side of the goal. If they scored in this case, on the left-hand goal, that's where I marked it. If they scored on the right-hand goal, I marked it. And it's pretty interesting that if you're, most cases, the recordings come from the bleachers across from the where the teams are. Something like, almost, you score almost like 7 to 10 more goals on this left-hand side. Again, if you're watching from the bleachers, this left-hand side, than you do on the right-hand side. Now, I don't know if that says anything, but I just thought it was interesting that whatever it captured, I would have thought it would have been equal, but anyhow. Okay. But on this case, for the men, I actually I don't know why, because I started at first, I put all the goals on the one side, so that was my bad. I should have spread them out, but okay. And now I just decided, okay, now that I got the pass covered, right? So this is the passing. Sort of know that if you're, more goals come from the central spot for obvious reasons. More goals start in the final third by a resound. So if you're in the middle and you're in the final third, you stand a much greater chance of scoring than if the ball starts out wide. So I decided to look at the goal. Same idea. Where do goals get scored from? And so if you just looked at where the goal was scored from, so this is going to be long range shot, what have you, 51% of all goals were scored in that central area. So, and it's, in this case, there were a couple outliers, but by and large, they're in this particular area, and you'll see that in a little bit. 49% are in, from the 18 and in, which is kind of interesting too, right? Because you would have thought that number would have been much higher, right? So, okay. So then I said, all right, so let's just look at the red zone of where goals are scored. And what does that red zone of goals, like where is the biggest concentration of goals? By far it's in this area, right? And 75%, if you can get the ball into this zone, right, you obviously stand a much greater likelihood of scoring, right? And 75 goals after the pass were scored from here. And that's, right on top of the goalkeeper, this area, which I think is almost the sweet spot from the 6 on out, or outside the 18. That is where the bulk of your goals get scored, which I thought, it does make sense. Although I thought it would be, I didn't think it would be as high, as I thought that there would be more goals scored on the perimeters, but not so. And which one's this? Okay, so then I said, based on what I watch, and this is just me watching and making some decisions that, again, this is where it becomes really subjective on my part, sort of what I like and what I think would work best. And I said, what would be the best plays? What would be the best, most efficient use of the ball if you wanted to score? And so I said, okay, let's make these certain assumptions. Let's just assume you have a back four, right? And I highlighted that red zone area because that's where you want to get the ball. And then I have three forwards because to one degree or another, everyone's playing with three forwards. And then I just said, a midfielder has the ball just beyond midfield. And the reason why that is I just said, the distribution of the ball for a goal, if you just said from the 18 to midfield, 45% of goals that were scored in this round, so 45 passes of the 100 goals came from this zone. So over, just under half of all goals started in this area. So I then said, all right, so knowing that, what would be the best, the most effective way to get the ball into the red zone where 75% of goals are scored? And based on what I watched, again, there's no science behind this other than what seemed to be the most effective. So there were two balls that were more effective than anything, and that's the ball between the center back and the outside back, a through ball for your outside wingers to run onto, right? And it wasn't so much that they were going to score upon receiving the ball, but they're taking a touch either into the zone or making a pass into the middle for someone like the forward to get, right? And just that ball alone improves your chances because it's going towards the goal. And I think this, and I didn't do the research, but I think this ended up coming up afterwards where I was like, well, that would make sense, right? That all you're doing is you're forcing the ball closer to the goal. But I don't think that that's it in of itself. I think a lot of teams try to go out wide rather than looking for that through ball. And I think that the reason why the through ball is so much better and so much more effective is because the defense gets higher, is standing higher than if you get the ball out wide. Right? If you get the ball out wide, the defenders start to drop. Whereas if you don't send it out wide and you send it through, number one, they're caught off guard and you have a good chance of getting at least the outside back out of the play. And the back line doesn't have the time to drop back as quickly. So this ball that comes through and the winger running through ends up with a lot more space. And if they take a touch into the box to look for a shot or pass it into the middle for one of the other teammates, the defenders are not in the best position to defend. That's a theory. Again, I don't know for sure. I said the reason why I focused in on this area and why I think this is where you want the ball to go as quickly as you can, especially when the defenders are up, is because 50% of the goals are scored in this zone. From the corner of the 18 to the corner of the 18, from the 6-yard box out to let's say the 25. In that area, 50% of your goals are scored. And to me, you're just, again, it ends up being almost like you're playing the odds. Okay, so assuming that you can't get that through ball. Sorry, this is where the one play that would work is getting to the end line. And the only thing I would say about that is, especially during the run of play, for me, there's only two balls that actually make a lot of sense if you get to the end line and can put it across, and that is actually not so tight on. Let me see. Not so tight on the not putting it across into the box, but sort of dropping it back. So, well, pase de la muerte, right? Like a death pass, right? Where you just drop it back and you hope somebody's running on, and the defenders have already gone back, dropped back to the six, right? That's tends to be the more effective. Or I would just say recycle it back and try to look for that through ball, right? Like that. That would be money. And the same, and it works on both sides. Again, sorry for the graphics here. So if you can, if in order to improve your chance to score, this is where, again, playing the odds, this is the zone where you want it to go. And the only reason why I'm not saying inside the six is because, and I'll talk about the goalkeeper situation, or at least the way I see it, and maybe rail against it. I don't know. My chief marketing officer tells me that I have to say controversial things and play it up, but I don't know. Okay, so I just really quick on this, the same idea. I just looked at dead balls and just looked at the dead balls that were scored. So same thing. I'm looking at that with the ball coming from that zone, except this time on dead balls, including corners, right? You want, and just to play it out, you want the ball to go between the penalty spot and the line, right? The end line. For this exercise, oh, I don't know why that's doing it. Okay. So the grays are just four defenders in a line. Let me go back really quick. There's three forwards in blue. I totally screwed this one up, but if you just had one of the players make a movement, instead of going into goal, go to the top of the box, you cover that portion, and again, you're sort of trying to get into position for where 75% of the goals get scored. But then the ball gets sent either to just outside the six, between the 12 and the 6, to somebody to win a ball there, send it back post, which worked surprisingly very effective, largely because, again, goalkeepers. But then also near post, near and far, if I recall, were probably the most effective spots to get a ball. Maybe not to get a goal immediate from there, but ball gets sent in, let's say back post, instead of heading it to goal, heading it across, let's say the 6-yard line, and somebody running on. That's probably the most effective. This might not be rocket science. I'm trying to really be a little bit more focused and saying, hey, just put it in at the 6. Well, there's a lot of spots in the 6 where it would be the most effective. So to me, you're looking at the 12 and the far post 6 and the near post 6 is, like I said, the most effective spots to send in a ball. And then the other one, I know this is the controversy my chief marketing officer told me about. The other one is I wouldn't even play it in the box. I know. I wouldn't even play it in the box. I think dead balls, unfortunately, may have been the goals I've been watching. Dead ball plays and corner kicks, controversy, I don't think are as effective as we like to pretend or like to say they are. Yeah, and let me go to the next slide and we can talk about that. Sorry about that last slide. It was a little bit of a mess. So lessons from the goals. Through balls, that to me is the money. Not the through balls when everyone's on the 6 yard line. I mean through balls where the defense is sort of collapsing back. There's a gap between the outside back, or the center back, and the outside back. That space, putting a ball through there, and then the winger knowing that their run isn't so much north south, but is peeled in. So trying to run behind that the defender. That to me is the money ball. You do that, you stand a greater likelihood to score. In all cases, and I was surprised that it was so high, is that how much the ball does get central. I expected less, but there's that. These next two are very particular. Near post runs are a big source of headache and goals, especially on dead balls. I just don't think keepers can get out quick enough or actually read it well enough. And then more broadly, everything I watched, how much teams struggle with high balls, which again I'm surprised by. I thought they would be much more adept at it since they deal with so many of these. But I also think it's in large part because goalkeepers, and I'm going to do another video on goalkeeping, but I just think goalkeepers, and maybe I'll have someone I know who trains goalkeepers regularly. Maybe I'll do a video with them. Anyhow, keepers do a poor job of controlling the box. There, I said it. I'll say it again. Keepers do a poor job of controlling the box on corners, on high balls, and I think part of it is presence. Part of it is training. Part of it is ability. I think goalkeepers have gotten very comfortable at staying on their line and becoming shot stoppers. And I think this is terrible for the defensive posture of any team. And I think that leads to a lot of goals. And if you remember what I talked about, my friend coach who I helped do an analysis of their goals, if you could just clear up some very elementary, what I consider elementary goalkeeping mistakes about controlling the 6 yard box, you would save yourself. A lot of those goals would not happen. Like I said, I'm going to do a separate goalkeeping video, or maybe two, and we'll uncover that. And then the last one, which I'm going to say, this is where the whole purpose of these videos became. This is my opinion right now. Corners don't work. Corner kicks in of themselves do not work. And when I came to the conclusion a few days ago as I was doing the video, I just did a quick survey of teams, a handful of teams, to find out how many corner kicks they took versus how many goals they scored. And if every one of those goals was scored by the number of corners they had, that would be good. But the reality is they probably don't. Maybe they get a goal, maybe they get 2 goals. For the amount of times that they have corner kicks, is sending it into the box worthwhile? I don't know. I don't think so. So one team I looked at had 131 corner kicks in the entire year. And for the entire season, they scored 29 goals. So 1 in 10 would have been corner kick goals if every one of those goals was scored in a corner. I don't think that's the case. I would anticipate maybe 5 started as a corner. Another school had 101 corner kicks, and they scored 22 goals in the season. One team had 74 corners for 29 goals. Again, those are all of the goals they scored in a season, not just the goals they scored on corner kicks. So that's why I say I'm not sure corner kicks, the way we currently play them, work. And then the other team I looked at, because I thought this is, you know, they they make their they make it their business to force the ball down your throat and try to get stuff like corners. They had 106 corner kicks in the year and scored 39 goals the entire season. So one in if again, if every one of those if every one of the goals they scored in the season came from a corner kick, that would be like 2 goals for every 10 corners, right? And that's just not, maybe 3 goals for every corner, for every 10 corners, and not that's not where they that's not realistic. And that's, again, not me doing analysis. That's just me thinking intuitively. Like, if I score 20 goals in a season, I'm not. They're not all going to be corners. So, anyhow, that's going to be a video I'm hoping to do. I'm hoping to look at one particular team where I look at all the goals scored, how many were corner kicks, both goals scored and goals against, and actually do a video on. So we'll see. Okay, so I just wanted to run this through one more time for you. I think this is a little bit slower. I can't remember what I did here, but again, this is where the passes start from, and then this is where the goals happen. You don't know how long this took me to put together this one slide. This was the can of worms. You can start to see the groupings of. That's why I wanted to do 200. I thought it would be much more plotted, but there's limitations to PowerPoint, so I probably would have to figure something else out. Anyhow, so that's I think this is the last one. Yeah, so that was my goal analysis for Division 3 men's soccer. Hopefully it was interesting. If you have any thoughts or comments, compliments, criticisms, by all means, feed the beast. Send me an email at sc149249@aol.com. Or I think, right, this is YouTube, so you could, down below, you could comment. Would love to hear from you. Again, hopefully this was at least give you something to think about, something. I'm not trying to revolutionize the game. I'm just trying to think of things that are in a little bit different manner, because I always say that I look at this game a little bit differently for one reason or another. So with that, just again, to highlight, keep an eye out for the 3 greater than 1 Premier League. Here, I'm hoping to do Thursday. We'll see if I have the time. And the interview with Coach Ruben Burke at Connecticut College coming up. Hopefully, I'll get that out as soon as it's done. I'm really looking forward to it. And yeah, and okay. And with that, thanks for watching. Really do appreciate. Again, my chief marketing officer would be upset. The subscribe, like, bell thing. And then by all means, spread the word. Would love to get some folks engaged and just giving me ideas to take a look at different parts of the game. Help me, help me validate or disprove thoughts, theories of mine that may matter or may not. Hopefully, this just sort of gets your creative juices flowing on the soccer field. So, with that, I'm going to call it a day and uh, hope you enjoy. Thanks again. Thanks for joining me. And Jackie, she says good night, goodbye. I don't know. She's just chilling today. Thanks again.